All right. Welcome, everyone, to the October, can you believe we're October already, Government Affairs Council meeting. And we're so excited to have a council member with us as well as a candidate for assessor. So let's start with our introduction. Neysa Fligor has an extensive and unique background as an attorney and policymaker. She is currently the vice mayor of Los Altos and served as mayor in 2021. In 2018 and 2022, she was a top vote getter to the Los Altos City Council. She's a member of the County Assessor's Executive Management Team and previously served as legal counsel for the Assessor's Office. So I think it's fair to say you know a little bit something about that office, Neysa. Neysa obtained her law degree from Georgetown Law and has worked in the private, public, and tech sectors. She's also held many regional leadership roles, including the president of the Cities Association of Santa Clara County, president of the Cal Cities Peninsula Board, vice chair of the Cal Cities Revenue and Taxation Policy Committee, and member of the El Camino Healthcare District Board. Neysa is passionate about public service and advocates for policies and programs that foster healthy communities and improve the lives of all residents. So thank you so much for being here with us this morning. It's a smaller group today. I'm just going to blame that on the government shutdown, but we're just going to quickly introduce ourselves so you know who's in the room. I am Diana Batista. I am chair of this committee for now, and day job is working for Stanford Children's Hospital. And we're going to run to Scott, who's muted.
Who should know how to do this by now. Good morning. Hi, Neysa. I think you know me, Scott Hunter, Executive Director of Los Altos Village Association. I am also on the Executive Board of the Los Altos Stage Company.
And Penny.
Penny Live.
I love it. Julie can probably do the same thing, Julie.
Julie Rose. Hi, Neysa.
And Nicole, our wonderful person in the chamber, and then everyone knows Kim, I hope. So, all right, Neysa, you were just introduced. The floor is yours. Now, when I first talked to you about this, it was kind of like, let's talk about a little bit about just a quick update, what's happening in the city. And then we'll love to jump into questions and talk to you more about your assessor campaign.
No, great. Thank you, Diane. And hi, Julie. I love Penny. Penny always does that. It's just Penny Live. Enough said, no additional information necessary. So thank you for inviting me. And I expect this will be very interactive. I do have a hard stop at 9:55 because I have to run to another meeting. But I think we have more than enough time to have this conversation. So thanks for the introduction. Thanks for inviting me. At the beginning, I had asked, how often are you doing these meetings? Because I remember, and it's all my fault, but I remember I used to come to these more frequently. So happy to be invited back today just to talk about what we're doing in the city. And then, what we do in the assessor's office. So basically my elected position, but also my day job. And I know Anthony was on recently and he covered what we're doing in the city and downtown. So I'll try not to repeat what Anthony has already covered. But, happy to be here. I am vice mayor of Los Altos, as Diana said. I'm in my second term. I was first elected, as you know, in 2018, served one term, was mayor in 2021, and then was reelected in 2022. And I think for most candidates, especially when you're running for re-election, you look back at your first term or your previous term and you go over what are the things you did, what are the things you worked on, so that becomes your platform for your re-election. But once you get reelected to that second term, even though you're just as busy and you're contributing as much as you were doing in your first term, you're not keeping track as you would because there's no reelection. In Los Altos City Council, we do have term limits. And so it's funny, for this meeting, I had to look back and say, okay, what have I been working on for the last 2.5 years since I got reelected in 2022? And realized, in addition to what Anthony already covered, we have been so busy in the city. I like to say we're doing many things. Two things that I think we've been really focused on is our housing element update. As you know, that was approved a couple of years ago. We were actually one of the first cities in Santa Clara County to submit a compliant housing element update. It took a few months for the state to approve it, but we actually submitted it that January, and we were very confident that it was compliant. It met the requirements of the housing element update. And yes, they came back with a couple of changes here and there, but substantially it was compliant. And so very proud to have been part of that council, especially representing Los Altos in Santa Clara County, to submit one of the earliest compliant housing element updates. And since we submitted it, we have hit the ground running. We have been moving forward, making sure we're checking all the boxes. You see a lot of work happening downtown. Some of that was identified in the housing element update. And I will tell you, as council, we're all 100% supportive of the plan and vision that's in that housing element update. As you know, our role is really to facilitate and create the environment to have these housing units built. We're, however, very fortunate in Los Altos where we do own land. So, for example, some of the areas that we identified for construction are on properties currently owned by the city. So, for example, the downtown parking plazas that we identified for affordable housing and market rate housing, those are owned by the city. And so we do have, so for those situations, we have more than just creating the environment and facilitating construction. We have more of a role in ensuring that that gets constructed. And so we're moving forward with those areas that we do have control over so that we can get the housing built, not only to meet our state mandate and the legal requirement, but also, and I know the chamber appreciates this and Kim talks about it all the time, it's to make sure that we also have housing at all levels to serve our community fully. So, employees working downtown in the service or retail industry, from CEOs and executives working in Silicon Valley, we want to make sure that we have housing units that will support all levels of income in Los Altos. Another great news related to housing is, of course, we broke ground at Distal Circle a few weeks ago, which was a long time coming. This didn't just happen in my second term. This is something the city worked on with Supervisor Simidian a few years ago, and lots of starts and stops primarily related to financing. But fortunately, EAH, which is the affordable housing developer that we've been working with and the county hired, was able to work closely with the county and Sacramento to get the financing we needed to move it forward finally. And so we broke ground several weeks ago. They've already started. As a matter of fact, a resident commented that it's moving quickly. You can already see the form of the building. And so that's also exciting when you think about housing in Los Altos and having that built in 5150. It's not an affordable housing development, but that's also moving quickly. And so it's exciting for Los Altos to know that we're having construction move forward. It's great for businesses. It's great for residents. And it's just great from a public sector, contribution to the housing market, which is so dire in the Bay Area and California. So that's housing. Another big area that council has been working on the last 2 years is safer routes to school. The one that comes to mind for everyone is Jardine, and everybody pronounces it differently. It's Jardin. Some people say Jardine. I'm sure there are other variations. But we did road improvements related to safer routes to school projects on Jardine, which is next to the high school. And there's been different iterations. There's been a lot of back and forth, but I think we're heading in the right direction, where we now have improvements that I think are, someone said, simpler, where, we want to make sure that when we do these street improvements, and if the goal is to ensure that we make it safer for kids and families to get to and from school, but also safe for our residents to move around their own neighborhoods, that we make it simple enough that folks will be able to understand and utilize it, and it doesn't create more problems than we're trying to solve, so no unintended consequences. And I think where we are right now, I've actually gotten feedback. I think it's not perfect, but everybody that I've talked with says it's definitely better than what it was. We're still hearing from some residents related to parking signs that go up on the particular neighboring streets, and we get feedback from that we should completely bar any school parking. We should only have residential parking on these neighboring streets, versus there's some residents who are actually fine with it. You can have 2-hour parking on these streets. And so we do get that feedback. And the plan in council, as you may know, is to revisit this, just to make sure, as responsible council members and city, that we revisit it to make sure that it is working, and if there are areas to improve, that we do it. But we don't want to do it quickly or rushed, because you want it to play out. You want to make sure when we implement these improvements, unless there's something blatantly at issue, let it play out, and let's make sure we vet it and give it an opportunity to be in the community and see how residents and the school community interacts with it and uses it, and then figure out, do we really need to make improvements, or is it working and it's working well enough that we're going to keep it the way it is. Also related to safer routes to school is we moved forward. This is something I actually worked on years ago in my first term. I think it was my first year. As you may recall, we used to have the school districts pay for the crossing guards. And different school districts, as you know, are funded differently. And we heard from one school district that overlaps with Los Altos that they couldn't afford to pay for the crossing guards, and they came to Los Altos City Council to ask us to pay for the crossing guards. And instead of the council at the time saying we're only going to pay for this school district's crossing guards, we decided that we would pay for the crossing guards for all the different school districts in Los Altos. So this is a decision we made back in 2019. And then fast forward to different issues related, and we were administering the program through the police department, and there were different issues, including, the cost of the contract going up year after year without getting the return from the services from the crossing guards. There were many issues with the crossing guards and the services they were providing. So we really needed to revamp and revisit this program, especially because we were administering it. And we did that, and we worked closely with the different school districts. And now we have a program where we now have all the school districts, even the school district that had an issue a few years ago with regards to a financial contribution. We now have all the school districts at the table, and they are contributing, and we're working with them with this new format. And so we are still managing the program. We're actually directly hiring the crossing guards as opposed to going through a third party. And we do have, so it's a much lower cost than what we're paying under the old contract. Yes, we do have the school districts contributing under this new model, but it's definitely much better. So far, it's new. What month are we in? We just started it in August for this school year. And as you know, if something wasn't working, we would have heard. And so far, I've not heard anything from the school community on whether or not it's working, it's worse, or, this is the best thing ever. Another thing we've been working on in the city relates to the Civic Center. There's a lot going on at the Civic Center right now. There was a pause when we had, our beautiful community center built. And then, of course, typical Los Altos, we're like, okay, what's next? What's been on our list for a long time? And, still on our list and still a priority for the city is to figure out a way to redevelop, remodel, build a completely new police station. Or a public safety infrastructure building, and that is still our priority. I think right now you have all council members supportive of that, and it's really just finding the funding to help us build a new public safety building. And whether or not it's a new police station and a fire station combined, or is it just a separate police station, that's something that we'll have to figure out as a council, but it continues to be a priority, and for us to identify the funding in order to do that. Also on the Civic Center, you may have heard that we now have City Hall, so where our city staff sits, included in both where City Hall is, our original building. But because of the growth in our office, to support all the good work we're doing in the community, we now have staff. We have converted converted Lacey into office space. And so we now have city staff also sitting over at Lacey. And I think we need to rebrand the name because people still refer to it as Lacey. And it's an easy walkway through the beautiful apricot orchards from one City Hall building to the next. So that's been another big change over at the Civic Center. And then, of course, we have the library and all the things that are happening at the library, both internally and externally. We just approved last night on our agenda allocating funds from the North County Library Authority towards the remodel project at the library. And so things are really happening. And I'm very excited about the remodeling that's happening inside the library. It will create more space and the consultants, and I can't remember their names, when they came to present their proposal to us, what I really appreciated from their proposal was they knew Los Altos. Like they had a proposed plan initially. They presented it to the community in different formats. And by the time they got back to council, it was clear they had incorporated to the extent they could the feedback that they heard from the community. And so I'm very excited about the new space that they're envisioning inside the library to accommodate more people, an easier flow, but also to accommodate the friends of the library, which, as you know, is a key stakeholder and contributor to the city. So those are, those are some of the big things we've been working on in the city. Council and staff have been busy, no surprise, in the last couple of years. And I'm sure I'm missing things, but those are the three top things. And I know Anthony covered, and with regards to what's happening downtown, I know Anthony already covered that when he was on, so I won't go into the detail. And we're also looking at making improvements. Matter of fact, I think it's on our next agenda, improvements at the Woodland Library, which is our other library in Los Altos. And then last night we considered drones, part of a first responder program for the city, which is very exciting. And that should come back October 28th to council. So I'm going to stop there. That's what we've been up to in my second term as council member and now vice mayor. And, my day job, as some of you know, is I work in the assessor's office, which is an elected office. We have, the assessor is an elected position. And so now I actually work for and in an elected office, in addition to holding my own elected office on city council. And that's been great. It's public service. As some of you know, I already worked in the county for 9 years. So I know the county well. I know how to navigate the processes here. They know me, I know them. And so it was really an easy transition for me to come back to the county and be part of the executive management team in the assessor's office. As Diana mentioned at the beginning, I was the attorney for the assessor's office for a couple of years. And I like to joke that county folks rarely leave. And so when I came back last year to be part of management, many of them were still in the assessor's office and they remembered me. We tried cases together, prepared for cases together, provided legal advice to them. And so it was really wonderful coming back. It's a great office. And for those of you who don't know, the assessor's office, we assess all taxable property here in Santa Clara County. And the law defines property not just as residential. So it's residential, it's commercial, it's business personal property. So, when you think of HP, where I worked for 9 years, it's our laptops, it's our printers, it's our other equipment in the office. We assess those in the assessor's office, in addition to mobile homes, aircrafts, vessels, boats. One of the things that may be of interest to this group is possessory interest, PI. So the parklets, big announcement from the assessor's office. Larry Stone, who is the retired assessor, who has been our assessor for 30 years, he announced this last year that starting with the roll year of 2026, so next year, July 1st, 2026, we are going to start assessing possessor parklets. We already assess possessory interest here in Santa Clara County, but we never did parklets before COVID, just because we have a low value ordinance and just the scale of it isn't what it was today. So that's something I know is of interest, and we are, for over the next year, we've already started doing this actually, but we're going to do more education outreach to cities and businesses so they know what's coming, they know the process, so that when we officially start doing it next year, no one will be caught by surprise. So that's what we do here in the assessor's office. Now, every year we do our annual roll. So all the taxable property I just mentioned, we assess them, we put them on the roll, we pass that over to the Department of Tax and Collections so that they can assign the taxable rate and issue those property tax bills to property owners in Santa Clara County. And so we do this cycle every year. It's very process and law driven. Most of what we do here in the assessor's office is based on state law. Or regulations coming out of the Board of Equalizations, which obviously I have the background in because I used to advise them on it, and now I have county counsel advising me on what we do here in the assessor's office. So I am going to pause there to see if you have questions, because as Kim knows, I can just keep talking. But that's the assessor's office, and that's what we've been up to in council.
Thank you so much. Honestly, that was very, very informative about the city and then the assessors. I have a slew of questions, but I see Scott has his hand physically raised. So Scott, I'm going to turn to you.
All right. So one of the reasons that I really wanted to come to this meeting, besides seeing you, Neysa, was, the assessor's office. And you say, okay, the assessor's office, we assess this, and then we pass that on to the tax guys. So I still don't get the process, and I get a letter from Mr. Stone all the time. This is how much your stuff is worth, and it's like, okay, well, what do? You kind of sit back and go, well, I think that one looks like it's a couple bucks, and that one looks like it's $100. What is the assessing process? And I also have to say, I do need to jump off in a little bit because there's a Follies meeting coming up, but please answer that question first.
And I'll see you at Follies on Friday, Scott. So it's very complex, and people don't realize how complex the work we do in the office. It is not as simple as some people may believe. So there are 500,000 properties here in Santa Clara County that we either review every year just to make sure that the assessed value on the roll is correct. And of course, we have the cap of 2% or CCPI, but we also assess new properties, and new properties could be new construction, change of ownership, remodels, mobile homes that are considered assessable property as well. And so in addition to reviewing existing properties, we also assess new properties as defined under the law. And, depending on the type of property, there are different valuation methods and laws that relate to how you assess that property. So let's say, for example, we identify a new property being built in new construction in Los Altos. And that's actually one of the legal obligations of the assessor, where we have to be proactive. And that's why we have investigators in our office. We have to be proactive and find and identify properties that are taxable that are not part of our roll yet. One of the easiest ways to do it, obviously, is when someone pulls a permit at a city planning department. We do have an interface with every city planning department, and we get notified and we get a copy of the permit. And so those are the easy ways we find out. But if there's new construction of a residential home, let's say in Los Altos, and we get notified, we get the information, and then we have, an appraiser and an assessment done on that new construction. And again, there are different factors. It's not just purchase price. It's not just construction and material cost. We look at comparables. You look at the market rate, their taxable rate areas. So there are different factors, legal factors, that we have to consider when we're assessing a property to place a value on that property. And it's not just simple real estate matters. We have very complex commercial properties, as you can imagine, downtown San Jose, Santa Clara. Like, we are assessing things from the arena in San Jose, 49ers Stadium. We're assessing all these different properties, and it's very complex. So one of the things I have, as I'm number 2 in the office. I'm assistant assessor. I'm managing the office right now. Basically, I like to say doing the work of the assessor. I'm just not the elected assessor. But one of the things that I have, and that's required, is I have a property tax certification. And what that requires is 2 things. One, that you're actually working in the office, so you know the work, you're doing the work But two, it is a very comprehensive exam that you have to take and pass. And as someone who has taken and passed the California bar, which is not the easiest bar, I, took that, passed it the first time. For me to say this property tax exam is not easy, people who have done the California bar understand what I mean. So it's not an easy exam, but that property tax exam that you have to take, it's not limited to just real estate appraisal work. It is comprehensive, where it includes all the different types of things we do here in the assessor's office that requires this property tax certification. We have staff, we have 245 employees that may have a real estate appraisal license, and they're doing a narrow area of the work. It's not everything we do in the office. I, for example, have a real estate broker's license. I've not renewed it. I had this license, but that again, we may have staff in our office who have that and they focus on a certain area. The property tax certification that I have, and that's required of a California assessor, is more comprehensive. We do assessments, audits, investigations. We have standards and services that deals with exemptions and exceptions under the law. There is just so much we do in this office that I really think if you're not here and part of the day-to-day operations, you can't appreciate it. And I think part of it is Larry has been our assessor for 30 years. And so people haven't really looked closely at our office in 30 years. And so with this upcoming election, I think people finally realizing what we do here and how complex it is. Because if you're just on the outside and Larry's just getting things done, things are, we're producing that role every year, you don't really appreciate how complex and technical the work is in our office.
Neysa, how large is your office? How many staff?
So for codes, we have 251 codes. Currently, we have 245 field codes. So and that's part of my role as assistant assessor. I manage the 245 employees. It's just like an org structure. I have division chiefs. So you have the elected assessor, at the top of the org structure. Then you have two of us reporting to the elected assessor. You have myself, who is the assistant assessor, and then we have a deputy assessor. The assistant assessor is responsible for, day-to-day operations. So you have to know the work, you're managing staff, and you're working closely with the elected assessor to keep him or her apprised of what's happening so they can approve things and do spot checks and speak about what's happening in the office. And then the deputy assessor, he or she is more external facing. Some people view the deputy assessor as more of a chief of staff role. And our current deputy assessor, so she works on legislation, she works on speaking engagements, she works on community engagement, and that's the role of the deputy assessor. And then under the assistant assessor, we have chiefs for all our different divisions, and then under each chief, then they have their own staff that they manage, managers, supervisors, appraisals, auditors, investigators, and so on.
Very good.
Thank you. Excuse me, we're going to jump to Julie and then Marie. Julie?
Thanks for all you do, Neysa. You're an incredible
Julie.
representative. And I have to jump off with Scott here in a second, but before I do, I want to ask two quick questions. First of all, can you quickly define a parklet? And secondly, is the youth center, Lacey, 100% administrative now?
It is. So I'll answer yes, the latter. Yes, it is 100% administrative with moves. It's City Hall number 2. And then parklet is defined as private business use of publicly owned property. So for example, the sidewalks in Los Altos that are currently being used by the different restaurants, that would be defined as a parklet. Now, with regards to assessing the parklet, there are different legal criteria that we apply on whether or not they constitute an assessable possessory interest. So you can have a small parklet that, because of its low value, it may not rise to the level of being assessed under the law because we have a low value ordinance. And it's basically just weighing, if, instead of having, 2 or 3 of our resources that cost X amount, is it, go out and assess a parklet that's really tiny, is that really justified? So those are the types of things we consider when we're identifying taxable possessory interest. So a parklet can be as small as 2 chairs outside of Starbucks on our sidewalk to more expansive use of our sidewalk by our restaurant. But then the key, Julie, is really determining if it's something we're going to assess. And there are different factors we're going to consider. And we're going to do more education. We're going to work with the chambers. We want to make sure that the business community understands, and the cities, because a lot of cities, or council will have lease agreements with the different either property owners or business owners. And so we want to make sure everybody understands what we'll be looking at in order to determine, one, if it's an assessable property, and two, what criteria we'll be using to assess it.
So I gather from what you're saying, Neysa, that there won't, because there are so many variables, there won't be a set square foot dollar value. Yeah, that's assigned.
Yes.
Thank you. Marie.
Thank you. Thank you, Diana, and thank you, Neysa, for all that you do for the community. So there have been a lot of commercials on TV lately about stealing homes. And to what extent is this a problem in Santa Clara County?
So stealing homes?
Yes.
You mean,
So basically,
yeah. Sorry, Marie, go ahead.
no, go ahead.
Well, no, it's a commercial that I don't know who's selling a product, but it's basically like someone can find your house deed and like kind of erase it. Like it's like someone can find my parents' house and like erase it and then put their name on it. So I don't know if it's like a commercial that's meant to like scare people into buying their product. Is this what you're alluding to, Marie? Because I saw the same commercial and my boyfriend was like, "What the heck?" So yeah.
Right, and so I looked up home lock your deed thing, and it's not considered legitimate.
So I haven't heard about this infomercial. No surprise, I don't watch a lot of TV. But
who has time,
I will
right?
But I will tell you that our office, and it goes back to what I said, we are very proactive and we investigate. We don't just take things for face value. So for example, in the situation where you have a deed, it's actually filed not with our office, but with the recorder's office, but we have API, we transfer data. So the deed would get filed with the recorder's office and we'd get that information so we can process new construction, change of ownership, whatever it is. But when we get the deed, we don't just blindly enter the information. We actually do our own background research to confirm the information is correct. We do this with the different propositions as well that we have to implement and enforce. And so for a situation like this, let's say someone, hacked into the system, into the recorder's database, and was able to change the property owners' names to their names. We don't, a matter of fact, this is something, so for one of the things we do, we actually have contact information on file, and we'll send a form and we get verification. So we do different steps to verify property owners because we get all the requests from people who claim to be property owners. And so we have to verify that information. And so to your point, just from the assessor's perspective, so I don't know what the DA's office, the district attorney is doing about this issue. But I can tell you from the assessor's office perspective, we don't just take the deed and the information that comes over on face value, and I assume the recorder's office doesn't as well. We do our own investigation because we do need to verify that it is in fact the property owner. We do this, for example, if there's an intergenerational transfer, we need to make sure that it's really, grandma to grandson, mother to son. These are things we have to verify because different laws will apply depending on the situation, and we want to get it right. Right. We don't want to exempt someone or get someone to pay property taxes for someone else because then they'll come back to us. So we need to validate and verify the information too.
Thank you.
See, despite the commercial, it does bring up a good question about cybersecurity issues. So I'm glad you brought that up, Neysa and Marie.
Yeah.
And one of the things that, I was the attorney for the assessor's office years ago. And then last year I came back as part of the executive management team. And one of the projects I was able to successfully work on is to acquire a new modern technology solution for our office, which has all these, and that was one of the reasons why we needed to move off our current platform because of the high security risk of this valuable data that we have. I mean, we have a $725 billion assessment role that's housed in the system. We have a lot of valuable historical data that we rely on, that a lot of public sector and nonprofits and even the private sector rely on. And so to your point, Diana, yes, cybersecurity is a top priority for me in the office and something that we're already working on.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned it, Neysa, when you talk about the parklet and reaching out to the business community. Now, I've known Larry Stone forever, so it's going to be weird not seeing him around like in his role. But with some, the someone coming in to replace, how does the assessor's office do you think it should interact with the business community, and how do you expect what can we expect hopefully in years to come? I think you were right. It's like Larry was in that role. I was like, okay, like, it's business as usual. We're doing it. But moving forward, I mean, I loved Larry, but I never really saw him outside of San Jose. And Santa Clara County is such a huge county. So I would love to kind of like pick your brain on that.
No, great question, Diana. And, I have a lot of respect for Larry. As I said, I was his attorney and then a part of his executive management team. And he has successfully and effectively focused on productivity and efficiencies in our office and making sure we never miss a role deadline. So we're not penalized by the state, and just his leadership at the state level representing Santa Clara County. But having said that, I will tell you, Larry stepped down in June. And even since last year, when I rejoined the office, we've already started doing things differently. And one of them is exactly what you said. It's how we engage with the community. Now, Larry loves to go to Rotary and in San Jose, and he loves giving big speeches because that's Larry's style, and it works well for him. One of the things we're doing more of, and I plan to continue doing, is actually, to your point, going to, first of all the cities in Santa Clara County and engaging with the community, property owners, real estate professionals, chambers, to make sure they know who we are, what we do, the programs and services we have available, and how we can work with them. And, to get ahead of things that we know are coming because there's a change in law. And so we want to make sure that we're working with you, because together, we all support Santa Clara County in different ways. And I want to make sure language isn't a barrier. So one of the things we've done and will continue to do is make sure that our materials are in the different languages that are here, the primary languages that are here in Santa Clara County. On our website, we're revamping our website right now. We're going to do that as well. And so we'll be broadening scale. Like we're going to go, I plan to, and I've already started doing this actually, going to different parts of the county to talk more about the assessor's office and what we do. And that's different from what Larry has done. I will happily still do speeches. As a matter of fact, I'm doing a speech tomorrow at the Cupertino Chamber, just so you know, wearing my assessor hat. But so I'll continue to do those because I do think those are valuable too. The commercial properties are significant on our role. And so it's good to continue to engage with them so they know what's happening in the assessor's office and how we can better work together. But continue doing a lot of the good things Larry was doing, but even more.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's no escaping the speeches. All right, one fun question, and then I have another one, unless somebody else has another question. But one fun question. Again, I've known Larry, love Larry, I will miss Larry. Larry was famously friendly booed whenever his name was mentioned. Do you believe that tradition will carry on, or do you think people will be like, "We'll be nice this time"? So
Dad, I get asked that question, so I'll tell you. So two things. I was in Morgan Hill, I think it was yesterday, and when the person introduced me, he jokingly said, I went, there was a candidate for the assessor office, and he jokingly said that we're all gonna have a hard time booing Neysa because of her smile, like, you know what I mean, like they're just gonna be very hard booing you, and I said this to them, and I'll say it to you as well. I welcome the boos. So the story there with the boos is Al Carlson, who was the assessor before Larry. He hated it. Like he would walk into a room and they'd start booing and he'd walk away. Like it really bothered him. And so when Larry got elected, Larry being Larry, he said to Carmen, his wife, I'm going to make this fun, right? Basically reverse psychology. I'm just, I'm going to embrace this. I'm going to make this a gimmick. And so Larry turned this into a fun thing where he encouraged people to boo him. Like it was like his thing. And clearly it distinguished him because every other elected official would get the applause, but he would get the boo and he loved it. Of course, we joke with Larry that yes, 90% of the room may be booing you because they like you and they're doing it affectionately. But the other 10%, they're seriously booing you because of that property tax bill you're sending to them every year. So, and just to loop back, I will happily, if I'm elected, I will happily take the booze. And I think my approach will be more similar to Larry, where it's just fun, right? We're doing our job. It's not the typical political position, where you're taking policy positions or you're adopting laws. We're really there to implement and enforce the laws adopted by the state. And so even if I don't like the law and I wish I could be booing too, I have to implement and enforce it. So I am totally fine with the booze.
I love it. It just cracks me up because
Yeah.
I remember being in a room when people who don't know the rule of booing, they're like, look so shocked and appalled. And it's like, no, it's good. He actually does encourage.
It's okay. It's
Yeah.
okay.
So,
And Diana,
okay.
I've been there too. Like I'll go to events and you'll have those newbies who don't know and they're like, is it okay? And I was like, no, it's a thing. It's a thing. It's okay. Yeah. And then when they see Larry, because he encourages it, just like, yeah, so it's good. It's all in good fun for most people in the room.
Yeah. Okay. Good to know. Good to know. Okay. I want to make sure. Are there any other questions?
I can ask a question here, Diana. So, Neysa, I'd be interested to hear you describe the way that you've served in city council versus the way that you're serving in the county assessor's office, and what do you really enjoy about each?
No, thanks, Kim. And they're so different, right? So in city council is more of a legislative body. For our council, we have 5 council members. And so you need 3 of the 5 of us to move anything forward. And it's very focused on policy making and new laws for Los Altos. So we just finished talking about, the housing element updates. Those are policy changes, but also compliance with laws that 3 or more council members have to decide. And so the approach to a legislative body is so different from an executive position like an elected assessor, where you work together. You may not always agree, but you have to find common ground, at least among the 3 of you, to move anything forward, right? And you're making laws together, and that's the legislative process. And the issues that go before city council also are so different from the issues that an elected assessor would have to decide. For the elected assessor, it's an executive position. He or she is making those decisions when they go on his or her desk. He or she doesn't have to convince, 2 or more colleagues to support it. And so it's more of an executive role. But the matters that the elected assessor has to make decisions on are not policies and laws, as I mentioned before. They're very, law-driven, administrative, where you're ensuring that your team is complying with the laws, it's the right codes being applied, you spot check the work, you have to understand the complexities in doing the valuation for the commercial properties. And as the assessor, you also have to know the evolution of the laws, from Prop 13, Prop 8, Prop 19. And so the education and the type of information that you need to know is completely different.
Mm-hmm.
How you govern is completely different. And how you make decisions is completely different. It's all public service, just from school board, city council, supervisors, you're all public servants and you're all doing the work on behalf of the public. And so that's the commonality among all these positions. But council is definitely different from the elected assessor. Both are collaborative in different ways. So with a legislative body, you are collaborating because you have to try to reach common ground and work and talk through things and try to convince 2 or more council members to come to your side, or they work with you and you have some kind of common ground to make a decision. For the assessor, it's collaborative, but in a different way. You have to work collaboratively with your team, right? One of the things that I do differently from Larry as well. I actually love going on the floor, but we go to staff and talk to staff and find out what's happening, sit side by side with them, because it is a team effort. The different divisions in our office, the work we do, we build on each other. And so it's a team approach. It's very collaborative. And we're just here to do the work, comply with the law, and get things done fairly, accurately, and on behalf of the public.
Mm-hmm.
That's
It
great.
seems though that as a leader, Neysa, that really understanding what happens in the assessor's office is incredibly important as our voters are looking at, candidates for this role. The way that you have experience in this from legal's perspective, from inside the office, and then you'd mentioned to me at one point in time that you are actually the only candidate that has a certain credential in tax assessment, right? If you could maybe elaborate on that, I found that really interesting.
No, you're right. So that is the property tax certification I had mentioned, and that's legally required. So a California assessor must have this property tax certification. And as I mentioned, it's twofold. One, it requires you to know the work in the office. And you have to demonstrate that you're in the office doing the work and you know the breadth of the work. And then in addition to that, you also have to take a comprehensive exam and pass, which tests you on the fact that do you really know what the assessor's office does? It's not just limited to fee simple real estate appraisals, or it is much broader than that. So it's not a real estate appraisal license. It's not a real estate broker's license. It really requires deep experience and knowledge of the work we do here in the office. And, you talk about leadership as well. For the elected assessor, you're leading in our office, we have 245 employees. And so the leadership also includes managing the office, right? And so it's not, you have supervisors, you have council members who have a variety of backgrounds. And that's what I think adds to the richness of a board of supervisors or council or even school board members, where you want diverse backgrounds. You want firefighters, teachers, lawyers, doctors, engineers, a mix of people with different backgrounds to come together to make these policy decisions representative of their communities. For the elected assessor, similar to the sheriff, where you want someone with a law enforcement background. Similar to the DA, the district attorney, where you want someone with a law background. For the assessor, you want someone who has this property tax certification, who understands the work, because that's what you do in the assessor's office. It's not as varied as other elected positions. And as this elected assessor, you are managing a department. And I will tell you, as someone who's worked in the tech sector and the public sector, the tech sector is not like the public sector. And I have experience in both, so I can make that comparison. And so when you're dealing with the county and knowing how to navigate this process, I have that experience as well, from budgets to hiring and managing employees and to get stuff done in your office. You have to really understand how we do work here in Santa Clara County.
Thank you, Neysa. Thank you so much. I want to be respectful of your time. I know you had a hard stop, but I want to thank you and give you the last minute of any final words you want to say to the group.
Thank you, Diana. Thanks, Kim. Thanks for all of you who were able to join this morning. The chamber, I've been working with the chamber since I've been on council. Admire the great work you're doing. Thanks also to the chamber and Kim's leadership for taking over the LEAD program as a LEAD alum. That's something that I was very excited to hear, because that's a wonderful program for our community. And I'm glad to see you guys take that baton and carry it on. So thanks for your work. Look forward to working with you in whatever capacity. And thanks again for having me.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Thanks, Nicole. I know Nicole does all the work in the back end. Thank you.
And before we sign off, Kim, do you have any announcements for what's happening this month or in the next?
Just quickly, I would love to mention the Taste of Los Altos, which is October 18th. I don't know if you have a second, Nicole, you could maybe put the link in the chat for us. So we have the first annual Taste of Los Altos. It's a taste, sip, and savor event for an ultimate kind of foodie experience for our community. We have a number of restaurants and other vendors that will be there with chef-inspired cuisine. We have chef demonstrations, live music, small bites from across our community. And oh, there we go. That's a little blurred. Nicole has the poster there, but I think it's blurred. There it is. There we go. For the event. So it's at the community center. We're highlighting our beautiful facility here in the community. Number of restaurants that you're all familiar with. They'll be sharing their menus for private dinners, holiday parties, catering, etc. So it's an elevated sort of food experience. And let's see, Enchante has a chef demonstration that they're planning. Chef Choose will have a roasted pig. And we have so many exciting things happening that we'd love to have you join us there.
Thank you so much. I'm buying my ticket hopefully today or tomorrow. And
we do have a discount for chamber members too. The code, I think, Nicole, is it chamber 50 or member 50?
I believe it's member 50.
Yeah, member 50. So chamber members get $50 off their ticket.
All right. Only if you heard this promotion now, only if you were at this specific meeting will
Yes.
you get that discount. So
For the next 10 people.
exactly. Awesome. Okay, great. So hopefully everyone gets a chance to buy their tickets. I will see you there.
I
Yeah.
see Mark Seidel in the chat. Mark, would you like to share the information about the volunteer fair this weekend? Lead will also be at the volunteer fair, or I can share if you would like me to, Mark.
I'm off camera, but yes, I'd love to share. Can you hear me?
Sure, yes.
Okay, great. So we have our third annual Los Altos Community Volunteer Fair on Saturday from 10:30 a.m. till 1 p.m. at State Street Market and across the street in front of the Assistance League. And we have 26 awesome nonprofits there to table and to share more information about what they do, but also most importantly, to share how people can get involved as a volunteer. So it's a great way if you know people, especially students who are looking for volunteer opportunities or people that love to volunteer because they have an inordinate amount of time, which is nobody, or you know people that are retiring and looking for other ways to really be invested in the community. This is a great way to come and figure out which organizations are serving the local community. So come on out. Hope to see you there.
It's a great event, and it will help us to our lead candidates are also planning to attend so that they can better understand some of the organizations that they can engage in the community.
When is it?
Oh, hi. Yeah, sure.
When is it?
Penny,
Saturday.
it's on Saturday from
Saturday.
this Saturday, the 4th of
Okay.
October from 10:30 to 1.
Yeah,
Yeah,
thanks
there
so
you go.
much.
Nicole's showing us the poster.
State
Thank
Street
you.
Market. And then we also have First Friday this Friday. The First Friday organization is now under the umbrella of the Chamber of Commerce as well. And so this is our first Friday together. So at 6 p.m. at the Veterans Community Plaza, we'll have a ribbon cutting and we'll have bubbly and bubbles and all kinds of fun things for our community members and their families. So come enjoy the music.
Wonderful. Lots going on. Anything else from the group? All right, I am going to put on my hospital hat and encourage folks to get their flu shots. Flu season is upon us, and also going to remind folks to keep an eye out for your ballots that are coming out soon. We have a couple of things on that ballot you may want to look at and vote on. So, anything else from anyone? Awesome. All right, it is 9:56. I will see you all next month. We have Assembly Member Mark Berman scheduled to speak to the group next month. So thank you so much again. Have a great rest of the day.
Thank you, Diana.
Bye.
Thank you.